Usually takes a minute before it actually goes live. Well, it starts going live before it actually gives you the confirmation that it's live. So I'm probably live right now. All right, we are live. Okay, welcome. I'm Seth Stewart. I'm running for Congress in Congressional District 4, and I just wanted to do this presentation in honor of Tax Day today, on just how we can overcome our biggest forms of taxation, including notably inflation and various other unconstitutional forms of taxation. And it turns out that we're not just powerless little pitiable creatures at the mercy of the creature from Jekyll Island. There are actually things we can do to hedge against inflation. And so there's going to be a practical component to this. There's something that people in Congress can and should do about inflation, and there's something that ordinary people can and should do about inflation and other various forms of taxation. So we're going to go ahead and go into some of that. Just doing a quick audio check here. Yep, audio's coming through. Okay, cool. Thank you. All right. So for starters, yes, the solution to inflation is in the Constitution. And I was just talking with my good friend Mark here about how a lot of the reason why we get accustomed to things as they are today in their horribly corrupt and decrepit state is just because that's the world we were born into. And so we think it's normal. A lot of people's definition of constitutional is basically whatever I grew up with. And that unfortunately has too much become conservative values in a nutshell, that we're just chasing after this thing and we don't even know what the thing is because we never got around to defining it or understanding what it really is at the origin. So it's vitally important that we turn our hearts to our fathers, at least in the sense of understanding things that they understood and knew, and perhaps even took for granted that nobody needs to be told this because it's common sense, right? So I'm going to be talking some common sense here. And there we go. There we go. All right. So this slide right here is just a quick health check on our Constitution. I ask people this question, and on each of our issues, we're going to try to get quantitative on it. We can go with like gut feel on some stuff, but if there are numbers to back things up, I try to do that. Um, any estimates on how intact our Constitution is when it comes to taxation?
Oh, yeah, it's nearly dead.
Nearly dead. All right. Sounds like Miracle Max, it's only mostly dead, but slightly alive, right? Yeah, so our friend the Constitution here is indeed only mostly dead, but he is mostly dead. And we're gonna figure out exactly what his health bar is at and what weapons have been deployed against it and what remains and what we can do. So yeah, when it comes to taxation, this is a fun little game right here. That yellow thing on the screen, probably most of us have never seen in our lifetimes, because in 1933, the federal government thought it would be a really good idea to just take all of them and offer people pieces of paper instead. 1933, they confiscated the gold. And 1934, they issued an order confiscating silver. Uh-oh. Okay, there's a huge problem already because our own Constitution says you can't do that. It literally says you cannot do that. And for some reason, every time I try to bring this up, the people in power just like don't care. And we need to figure out, how do we get them to care? And how do we get ourselves to care more about it and realize our situation and do the things that will be effective in hedging against that? Just one quick example here. When I was a delegate in 2022, I was a state delegate, and I was vetting John Curtis, who was up for election in Congressional District 3, and this was before the redistricting age of, of late. And I just asked him, what are you going to do about the Federal Reserve? Are you going to hold them accountable for being a counterfeiting agency? Are you going to return to Article 1, Section 10 currency? And he hemmed and he hawed and he claimed not to understand the question. And or that the Republicans don't have enough of a majority to do that right now. I'm like, well, they've had a majority how many times over the past few decades? Have they just not been aware of this issue? I think awareness is part of it, because you can totally have somebody elected to Congress who doesn't even know that Article 1, Section 10 exists. or as far as what it says about our currency and what that implies. We might have read the document dozens of times, but still not put two and two together about, okay, but what does that mean for us? And so one of my favorite tactics is just to take a look at what we do today, what everyone thinks is normal, and just compare it to what the Constitution says. I think that's a great study plan for the Constitution. What do we do with currency? What do we do with taxes? What does the Constitution say about that? And is there any mismatch? And if there are mismatches, then you go and be the gadfly and you start asking questions about it. So I started asking questions about this, and it will take you places. Let me tell you what. But maybe I should show this. There's actually just to maybe I'll summon this as a second witness. But if you look at gold and silver prices, I think I'll have some proof for what I'm about to say to you here. But of the three things on this image right here, two of them are real money, and the one down here is fake. Federal Reserve note, promissory note, aka IOU, dollar bill, bill of credit, more or less. People will argue about the semantics of those terms, but the truth is, this piece of paper is nothing but an IOU, and you're just taking their word for it that this has value. Goodness knows how much value, but it's always decreasing, and that's the primary point. And if we want to do just a head-to-head here as well, this is actually a plank of the Communist Manifesto. Paper currency, a certificate, what they called it. They said every day at the end of the worker's shift or every pay period or whatever, he goes home with a certificate so that he can buy enough bread to survive until tomorrow and then come back and do the same thing over again. So living paycheck to paycheck. This is literally described in the writings of the founders of Marxism.
To keep them alive and able to actually build wealth.
That's correct. The accumulation of wealth is expressly forbidden in private hands, private, not centrally government consolidated hands. The abolition of all private property is indeed expressly the objective of Marxism. And so you can't abolish private property unless you can actually take it away and then, in this case, offer something paltry of no value in as a substitute for it. We are going to go over some numbers and stats, though, as to the effect that this inflationary currency system has had on us. Because the Federal Reserve was established in 1913. And then, and another really important thing actually about the 16th Amendment, which paved the way for the Federal Reserve, is that it also did away with the Constitution's prohibition on all direct taxes outside of a census tax. And this is kind of foreign territory for us. So I'm just going to give a brief outline of the tax methods as well. The Constitution originally only allowed four methods of taxation. There was a census tax. In other words, you just pay a flat amount just for being an adult human being. And that was collected through the states. And then there are three indirect taxes. It's imposts, excises, and duties, which translated into modern language are roughly tariffs and luxury item, sales taxes or something like that. So,
Yeah.
so you have that handful, not even a handful of legitimate taxes that the Constitution originally said. And one of the things that a lot of people maybe don't realize about the 16th Amendment is that it just completely blew the lid off of direct taxes to where, and it also allowed the government to levy taxes without apportionment. So, in other words, to tax in a manner that is not bound to your personhood. They could be bound to literally anything else they want. So that means they could now tax anything. They could tax literally anything and call it legitimate because thanks to the 16th Amendment. And hence we have property taxes, we have inheritance taxes, we have sales taxes on everything, we have climate indulgences, taxes. We have yeah, well, we have so health insurance mandates are a form of tax. The Sibelius versus National Federation of Independent, whatever, I forget, NFIB. In 2012, that was when Obamacare was challenged in the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, well, we can't actually justify this using the Commerce Clause, so it's a tax, right? And so at least they're being like semi-honest about it, but it's also like it is still not pursuant to any enumerated power. And the really clear thing that we should see about all these forms of taxes is that they're just socialism. It's literally just socialism. Insurance mandates, subsidies, etc. It's just creeping socialism. But it's only a little bit, and so it can't possibly be socialism, right? We get that argument all the time. But anyway, suffice it to say, we need to reclaim these two precious metal objects on the top if we're ever going to uh, stop the flood of cheapo currency and devaluation of our currency. And so one question now is any estimates as to the valuation of the dollar today? What is the dollar worth today versus when the Federal Reserve was created?
Oh, 99.5, 8% of the value has been inflated away since the, uh,
Since the Federal Reserve was created. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and take that as legal tender. And yeah, I think it's a very good estimate. Interestingly, when I talk with people about the status of our rights, they'll give estimates like often it's like 15% or something like that. But yeah, in the case of, oh, there's one more thing I should mention about gold and silver and why those were confiscated is because even if the government could print an infinite amount of funny money, as long as there are a sizable proportion of the people who are using real money, then there's only so much wealth they can steal using inflation if you don't accept the funny money. And so that's a key. That's something we need to remember, bear in mind for how to solve this problem, which is why 20 years after the Federal Reserve was created, they did the gold and silver confiscations. Because they're like, hey, we're not able to steal enough money from you guys because you're too smart and you still know what real money is and you're hanging on to it. Oh, you're not allowed to own stuff. Come on.
you know, having the market dynamics like to be able to pull on instead of a monopoly on the actual types of money and allowed.
That's right. Yeah. So the government stole our trust because money ultimately is a it's a form of trust, right? It says we trust you because you've provided this much service to society, and therefore society owes you this much in return. And if the government can steal that, then they're just laundering trust. But just moving forward, there we go. Okay, so yeah, I'm going to use an official figure because the Consumer Price Index, which is a cobbled together assortment of metrics that recently changed during the pandemic to conceal how much money the Federal Reserve was printing. But technically, it's the Bureau of Engraving and Printing enabled by the Federal Reserve. But less than 3% of the dollar's value has been retained since 97%. And that's only the part that they're telling us about because this is why they only estimate and this is why you can't audit the Fed, right? But this is something that we can do. This is something we can do in public policy and in public venues, public spaces, is because it has become fashionable to use hashtag audit the Fed. Elon Musk is big on that. He's never going to do it because you can't audit the Fed. It's unaccountable. Like they're a book cooking organization by very nature, by their charter. They're supposed to cheat, they're supposed to lie, they're supposed to steal, they're supposed to falsify records. That was their commission from Congress, and that's what they've been doing. And so holding them accountable, good luck. But what you can do is, sure, you could say audit the Fed. But this is part of the problem that's inherent in the very nature of inflation is that neither you nor I can falsify the existence of, some hundreds or thousands of pallets full of cash nominally valued at trillions of dollars in some warehouse somewhere. I Somebody comes forward, whistleblower says that's the case. I'm like, I can't prove you wrong. If somebody said that much gold existed in a warehouse somewhere, I'd be interested. I'd be like, intriguing. That sounds unusual, right? That sounds implausible, in fact, because gold is inherently difficult to extract. But yeah, and Elon Musk bragged about this with Doge finding these computers where he said they literally had this field where you just type in a number and that much magic money just poof appears somewhere and yep, and this has been fueling our housing crisis because we have these Federal Reserve connected, supposedly private investor organizations like BlackRock and Vanguard and oh, what was the other something Street? Anyways, I'm not remembering the name of the organizations, but organizations that have heavily invested in and bankrolled Elon Musk. Actually, they're the number one private investors, the angel investors. So, but this is what our enemy likes to do: is he likes to diversify his holdings and his stealings, and steal things through a variety of different channels. And that way there's always a mask of plausible deniability. And we'll find that if you want to do the exercise to estimate your effective tax burden, I'm going to remind me at the end and I'll tell you what I estimated my effective tax burden using real world numbers is towards the end here. So, um, but begin thinking about that, just how much my true real world estimate is that it's closer to 1%. But even using official figures, if you plug these numbers into an inflation calculator where the interest compounds over time, and even without compounding, right? So there's a compounding. The reason I bring compounding interest up is because inflation does compound over time, which is one of the reasons why the only way to hang on to money is to put it into like a high return investment account. Something that will give you a big ROI that just exceeds the actual inflation rate. And that's the only way that you can even hold on to your money. So you have some portfolio that gives you, good, safe 5% annualized rate of return. And then big if, the annualized inflation rate stays, well below that, then in theory, you're still making money. But if the true inflation rate is at or near or slightly over or way over 5%, then you're still not even hanging on to your value, even though you tried really hard to go find a good fund to invest in and did all the work and you're being productive with it and being responsible. So it is literally just a theft instrument, but it gets very pernicious. So oh, this is fun. All right, founding father quote, gratuitous right here. Paper is poverty. It is only the ghost of money and not money itself. What a good phrase. I love that so much. And so I want a bumper sticker of this, except it's too much text for a bumper sticker. But somehow we need to bumper sticker into our brains that think of that. It's it's just a ghost. It's what your savings once were. And oh, you wanted to comment?
I kind of simplified it to paper equal poverty and maybe a ghost image in the corner and then just showing the ghost of money. It's like another image somewhere amongst those words.
There we go. Yeah, you could totally memify this with a pile of real cash, giving up the ghosts and all these paper bills spewing out or something. Yeah, power of the press, right? Um, but yeah, and this is why it is. And one of the things that's just really honestly sad, and we need to arm and equip ourselves against is like I hear people trying to justify paper money under all sorts of like really just honestly dumb rationales like, oh, but like gold and silver weigh a lot. Like you don't want to go around like carrying actual money in your pockets to pay for stuff. Cause I mean, you'd have to like carry a wheelbarrow into the grocery store just to buy your groceries. And I'm like, excuse me. Yeah. So you got a little, is that a little gold back or something?
This is a quarter book back.
Quarter gold back. All right. Interesting.
So the Idaho series, the first series.
All right.
Was the quarter gold back.
The quarter gold back. So is this worth like what, $2.50-ish right now?
Yeah, it's close to $3.
Close to $3. All right, yeah. Yeah, and that's important. We're going to get into gold and its valuation. But I want to be respectful of the room time here. But yeah, so this is one of the reasons why the government keeps on spending unaccountably is because we don't even see it. It's invisible. Since it's so ghostly, it can just pass through walls at will. It can just evaporate and it's just gone. And so you can't even hold on to it. And this is one of the things I think that just unplugging the Federal Reserve, like right now, overnight, this is one of the government programs I have no issue with just quitting cold turkey and determined to do everything I can to make that happen if I get in a position where I can do anything in that department, is there's no downside to just stopping that because they're just sapping your wealth, they're just stealing from you. And if you do require the government to receive its tax money in gold and silver coin, then you actually see it leaving your hands. You feel it, and you're like, but I could have built a brand new gazebo with that, right? You actually mentally process the fact that what is yours is now being outsourced. And I think this would do far more to curb unaccountable spending and taxation than just about anything else we could do. Exactly. It's not just some ethereal thing, some blip, some electrons moving down a wire and electricity. And So physicist will correct me here. But all right, so we could look at charts for like gold prices and stuff. But I'll just leave this as a research assignment because it is fairly depressing. But the gold price right now, so here, let me go. Yeah, I can show you some here actually. So I did a little bit of investing lately. And here we go. This it's like savings, right? So this right here, that is a $20 piece pre-1933. Do you know how much $20 from 1933 in mostly gold? It's like 90% gold, 10% copper. Today's currency, what is that worth?
How many ounces is that?
That is 1 ounce.
Yeah. Should be just under 5,000.
Yeah, it's roughly $5,000. So if you go by that metric, then what's the effective inflation rate since then?
Yeah, 20 to 5,000. Definitely less than 1%.
Yeah, it's more than 25-fold inflation, right? And it's still just being run away. And there are a lot of things that can mask. So gold and silver don't exactly track inflation, but they're a useful metric because that used to be $20. So anyways, we should really think hard about those things and just like do what we can to debunk these really ridiculous arguments. I was going to say like to answer the concern that, oh, well, money is too heavy to carry around. I'm like, no, I could still, even with today's ridiculously inflated housing prices, I could still buy a nice house for a pocket full of gold. I could still totally do that. And I could still go to the grocery store and just have like, here are 2 silver coins for this entire basket, right? I can still totally do that. Um, so yeah, and then there's the notion of like, oh, but if you're carrying it around, someone might try to steal it from you. I'm like, well, I'd prefer that to like somebody in a bank trying to like actually stealing it from me because he's got the armed guards to keep me out of my money now.
Yeah. And that argument didn't stop robbers from stealing paper money from people.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. There's still people who go around, oh, there's a $100 bill in your pocket. Well, I'll take that, right? Because and so I'm going to go ahead and have a call to action right here, and that is that you insulate yourself against funny money. And I'm not here to sell you gold. I'm not here to sell you silver. I'm not here to sell you gold blacks or any of that stuff. But it is just an objective fact that precious metals, you can't inflate. Like people say, oh, what if we get a whole bunch of gold from an asteroid or something? Like, okay, then the semiconductor, industry will do really well, because it's an industrial commodity, right? It has intrinsic value. And Aristotle has a really great essay if you want to do a deeper dive on this, on the 4 attributes of money. And like almost the only things that satisfy his 4 intrinsic attributes are gold and silver. I will give you some investment advice right here. Crypto is trash. Hate to say it, but people say that it is a decentralized currency. That's not true. It is extremely concentrated, and that is because cryptocurrency depends on bleeding edge semiconductor manufacturing. You need some kind of GPUs or application specific integrated circuits like the Bitcoin miner machines in order to be able to create Bitcoin. And what that results in is whoever has the bleeding edge nanofabs uh, for that technology, they get cheapo access to it. And this is one of the reasons why I disagreed with Donald Trump on his tariffs. Tariffs, even though they are a constitutional form of taxation, can be abused. And I think we need more safeguards against that. Because I noticed this as a machine learning researcher, I needed to purchase GPUs for my own use for research. And during the pandemic, there were supply chain shortages, but there was also markup, very big markup on our own product that was being manufactured overseas. So the GPUs are designed in the United States, and we ship that tech. We just hand the technology on a silver platter to these countries in East Asia, and then they mass produce the things. And then we are taxing ourselves to import our own product. That's what the tariff is. I'm paying money. I pay more money than a Chinese national would for our own technology, our own bleeding edge technology. And there was a big shortage of GPUs during that time, which means that there were these massive GPU farms, making goodness knows how much money just mining crypto during the pandemic. Well, the gamers in the United States were like, I can't even get one. And there's this, research student who's like, hey, I need this for my genetics research or whatever. Um, so we can't even access our own technology when tariffs are misused. But um, so just a little tidbit here. Gold and silver, they're gold and silver for a reason. These are gold, silver standard. Uh, and it's more than just having your money backed by it.
I mean, don't, I mean, on the internet being.
That's right. That's right. And the blockchain is in theory peer-to-peer or a mesh topology or whatever. But even that's vulnerable to state actors and attacks by them. And I also didn't mention that crypto relies on cheap electricity, which you don't always have. State actors do when they want it. So yeah, if you want things that are durable, I recommend these, but I will also recommend just home food storage. And this is what we have been forewarned of, by the example of Joseph in Egypt and on other occasions. You can't eat gold or silver, but you can eat wheat, and it keeps for literal decades. I've eaten 70-year-old wheat before, and it wasn't. That wheat was maybe less than ideal. So it had been kept in these vegetable oil cans, and anyway. But 30-year-old wheat, I had some of that, and it was tasted like it had been canned yesterday. Um, so that's a lot of wealth.
Any affinity for the precious metals that are in a particular form?
In a particular form, for me personally, I prefer coinage because that's
I was kind of facetiously giving that precious metals that can be used for supplemental purposes.
oh, well, I mean, there are high technology applications for gold and silver there, but are you just referring to lead as a precious metal euphemistically?
Steel.
Steel. Yeah. Yeah. Well, steel is a precious metal in the sense that it's like it's a post-Iron Age technology, right? So the ability to manufacture things is actually one of your greatest safeguards against inflation because suppose we have some kind of a mark of the beast system ushered in tomorrow. 100% plausible based on, well, it's currently like already mostly there, actually. Based on what I've observed in our state legislature and nationally and so on. And this is not like religious speculation or anything. This is like, no, I'm just looking at the fruits. I'm just observing what they're doing. And this is what they're doing, is they're making it extremely difficult for people to buy, sell, or even trade in many instances. They're making it very difficult to produce and to retain the value of what you've produced. So that any of those things by itself would be, like, in a nutshell, catastrophic, and we're already there. So, um, but yeah, because here's the thing, uh, if we don't need to buy stuff, then in theory, at least that far, inflation will be not needed. But of course, the government, even if you don't earn anything, you don't spend anything, the government still taxes what you have, property taxes, for public schools, which are also a plank of the Communist Manifesto. So they're stealing your money and your means, which you need to survive, to indoctrinate your kids against you, to steal your stuff. So, oh man, all right. I, yes, because they'll have.
Most of groups. I will say that it's not as egregious when it's a tax on the value of the location that you are monopolizing, it's just something, but what you have built with your own hands should be something that you can consider as part of ownership, free and clear, someone else's claim on ownership.
It should be fully free and clear. And the only claim that anyone else can have on your land is your posterity. Your posterity have a right to your land after you pass on. Yeah. That's inheritance. That's the law of inheritance. And actually the Jews actually have something really tremendous to teach us here. Jubilee, where even if you fell upon hard times and you leased out your land, because if you even sold your land to someone else because you're like, hey, I can't even afford bread, and I can't afford to be a landowner anymore or whatever, you sell your land, and then on the year of Jubilee, which is every 50th year, so 49 years and then 1 year of Jubilee, um, that land returns to you. So according to the Lord's own standard in the scriptures, you cannot permanently disinherit yourself from the land. It's not possible. But the Marxist way is the exact opposite. The socialist communist syndicate says you don't even have a right to exist on this land. And because if you don't have a right to your land, then you don't have a right to exist, period. Because where are you going to go? Oh, we'll go to the moon. Well, they're going to land on the moon, colonize that too, and tax you there too. Going to go to Mars? We'll tax you. They'll find you. They'll tax you. All right. So I don't worship gold or silver. It's just a mathematical, physical, logical, hard fact that they can't be inflated, but this other stuff can. And yeah, so this is my campaign platform when it comes to the Federal Reserve and the Fed. That simple. Don't audit the Fed. There's nothing to audit. Just end it. Just pull the plug on it. Just admit that they're a counterfeiting agency and hold them accountable for it. Stop it. So we got another little fun thing here, and this is how you can actually end the Fed locally, starting in your own towns, your own cities, your own states and neighborhoods. Something I ran into that Joseph Smith just kind of offhandedly said once upon a time about money. I'm just going to read you this quote. So good. Okay. Situated as we are with a flood of immigration constantly pouring in upon us, I consider that it is not only prudential, but absolutely necessary to protect the inhabitants of this city from being imposed upon by a spurious currency. Okay. So it's pre-Federal Reserve era, and they were still being threatened with spurious. Yeah, there we go. So there were all these certificates floating around regardless, right? Many of our Eastern and Old Country friends are altogether unacquainted with the situation of the banks in this region of country, and as they generally bring specie, that is money, with them, they are perpetually in danger of being gold by speculators. Besides, there is so much uncertainty in the solvency of the best of banks that I think it much safer to go upon the hard money system altogether. So what he's saying is there are people here among the saints who have real money with them, and then there are these speculators who come by and say, hey, will you want this for that? Will you trade me this for that? And what they're trading them has no value. And so he says, just stick with real money. Just stick with hard assets. That's right, the gold and silver. But it gets better. Listen to this. Okay. I have examined the Constitution upon this subject and find my doubts removed. The Constitution is not a law, but it empowers the people to make laws. For instance, the Constitution that governs the land of Iowa, but it is not a law for the people. The Constitution tells us what shall not be a lawful tender, which is what shall not be is exactly what we use today. Article 1, Section 10 declares that nothing else except gold and silver shall be lawful tender. This not saying that gold and silver shall be lawful tender. It only provides that the state may make a law to make gold and silver lawful tender. So if you wanted to understand federalism and so-called states' rights through the proper lens, this is a worked example of it. Saying the Constitution gives you the latitude to do that. It doesn't prescribe. Well, the federal Constitution governs land. Let's see. I believe he's referring to the federal Constitution here. I haven't read the Constitution of Iowa on the topic but also he says something about Illinois a little bit later on. But okay. But yes, this is Article 1, Section 10 in the United States Constitution says this, right? And it provides that the states can do that.
So you just referenced Iowa as just the location they are in, the society is speaking of.
Right.
But he's still referencing federal constitutions in this particular.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. So I know of no state in the Union that has passed such a law. Interesting. The Constitution flew those doors open to you, and no one's staking a claim. So it's really important actually to stake a claim here. Make a statement, pass a law, because then you can't be gold by these speculators. So he says, I know of no state in the Union that's passed such a law, and I'm sure that Illinois has not. The legislature has ceded up to us the privilege of enacting such laws as are not inconsistent with the Constitution of the United States and the state of Illinois, and we stand in the same relation to the state as the state does to the Union, right? So you're governed by your state and national constitutions, but you can work within that framework. The clause referred to in the Constitution is for the legislature. It is not a law for the people. So it should leave the people unbound in theory, right? But it should bind the states. I'll pause here real quick. I've heard the argument that, oh, but the federal government can use whatever it wants because Article 1, Section 10 only says that no state shall make anything but that. And it's like, well, then how can the federal government do it? How can they spend it in any state if the states, they could not force you to accept stuff that isn't real money in the states if the states would just man up and pass a law that says gold and or silver be our law. The different states and even Congress itself have passed many laws diametrically contrary to the Constitution of the United States. And for that, you'll want to tune in tomorrow while I do a debrief on the legislative sessions for the past 2 years in the state of Utah, what they've been up to. I can vouch for that. The state of Illinois has passed a stay law making property a lawful tender for the payment of debts. And if we have no law on the subject, we must be governed by it. Shall we be such fools as to be governed by its laws, which are unconstitutional? Isn't that interesting? So Illinois passed this law that says, hey, you can use chickens as currency or whatever. I don't know what the law actually said, but like it's in property, okay? Or maybe land even, right? No, we will make a law for gold and silver, and then the state law ceases, and we can collect our debts. Isn't that cool? Powers not delegated to the states or reserved from the states are constitutional. The Constitution acknowledges that the people have all power not reserved to itself. I got asked a question earlier today if I'm a lawyer. I got asked that same question last night. I will let Joseph Smith answer for me. My answer is his answer. I am a lawyer. I'm a big lawyer and comprehend heaven, earth, and hell to bring forth knowledge that shall cover up all lawyers, doctors, and other big bodies. This is the doctrine of the Constitution, so help me God. Yes, I'm a lawyer because the Constitution enables me to be a lawyer and it does not forbid anyone to practice law. It does not allow for it to be licensed. So the government can't do that. That's right. It doesn't even authorize that as a prerequisite or a precondition to being admitted into a court of law. The Constitution is not law to us, but makes provision for us whereby we can make laws. Where it provides that no one shall be hindered from worshiping God according to his conscience is law. No legislature can enact a law to prohibit it. Whoops, that's what they've been doing. And that goes all the way back to the founding of Utah's statehood. The Constitution provides to regulate bodies of men and not individuals.
Just wanted to know your presentation serves until 7:15.
Okay, all right. Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate you, sir. Thank you. All right, we got to wrap up. Okay, yes, we are in fact over time. Yes. Okay, so this is what I'm urging us to do then is you can move upon, you can urge your city council to pass a municipal ordinance that says, hey, gold is our official currency here. You can't make us accept anything but that. And the federal government has to respect that, as does the state or gold and silver. So yeah, theft is theft. And inflation is theft. Not all taxation is theft, but inflation is theft. And if you want my back of the envelope candid estimate for what my effective tax burden was last year, it's roughly 66.6% of every dollar that my employer paid in personnel costs alone to me as a person just got usurped by the governments. 2/3. Yep. That is how far we are gone, even in the present, without the compounding, without I did figure in a modest inflation figure into that, but not an excessive one. So, all right. The Federal Reserve tax. Well, thank you very much. I've got a lot more to say on this about how the government actually conceals a lot of taxes. Like many people probably don't know that their payroll taxes are actually twice what your pay stubs say they are. So an example, Social Security and Medicare, I think are collectively 7% almost on our usual on your pay stub. But what you don't realize most of the time is that they actually make your employer pay the exact same amount before you even get your gross pay. So you're double paid. And this is a theme with the way the government takes away your rights is that they'll target a minority that they know doesn't have a very big voice on the public stage. And they'll oppress that minority. And because their voice isn't very loud. Yeah, there we go. And so they're just gonna, but that's your money and they're stealing it. And it is theft because it's not pursuant to any enumerated power. Socialism is not pursuant to any enumerated power. All right. That's it for tonight. Thank you so much for attending. And please feel free to drop me any questions.
So if we were to try to get a city here in Utah to pass a law about legalizing gold and or silver as tender. This would be for the sake of considering it payable for debts and taxes that are due to the city of, you know, whatever this may be. When I'm gonna pay you tax to the county, there's a portion that's going to the city.
Uh-huh.
Would it be that the city would just be saying that our portion of the property tax could be payable through is it a shoulder that might be acquired in that property tax process?
You could do that. I mean, I abominate property taxes because, again, not pursuant to any weird power, but whatever taxes they might justifiably exact, they could require to be paid in gold or silver, which could be actually a great way to get the people familiar with it. Because if it's a government directive that your taxes have to be paid in gold or silver, I think that's brilliant, actually. Because there are a lot of people who have cold feet about it just because they're like, I'm not even familiar with this substance. Like, I don't know what this is. I don't know how to use it. And it's like, well, if you have an official framework that demands it, then people will get used to carrying it and using it.